Have you ever had a donut that is soft on the inside and also crispy on the outside? Well, until making these, I hadn't either. And of course I mean the crispy donut part. Now, I'll admit, making donuts at home is one of those things that sounds kind of crazy until you do it. And rather than try to explain just how amazing a homemade donut is, I thought it would be best to just show you. Crispy is a word that I never thought I would use to describe a donut. And after making these, I am hooked on making homemade donuts. By using a cold bulk fermentation, we're able to get these crispy little bubbles, which is something I've never seen on the exterior of another donut before. So forget about the donuts at your local grocery store and fast food chains. Today, I'll be showing you how you can make one of the best donuts easily at home. The base for this fluffy donut is going to start with a Tangzhong. In a small sauce pot, add in 330 grams of whole milk and 45 grams of a strong all-purpose flour. Whisk until all of the flour has been dissolved and then turn on the heat to medium. Continue whisking as the Tangzhong heats up. Normally when heating a Tangzhong, I would stop at 150 F, but I've recently discovered that there's a benefit to scalding milk and yeast risen doughs. So by heating the milk to 185 F, the proteins in the milk that inhibit gluten formation will start to denature, and as a result, we'll get a fluffier and higher rising donut. So when the Tangzhong has gotten hot enough to start bubbling, mix in 45 grams of sugar and 11 grams of salt to help cool it down. Quickly cover with the lid to prevent the skin from forming on top, and then move it to the fridge to cool down. And after about 4 hours in the fridge, the Tangzhong will be around 50 degrees and ready to use. Thoroughly scrape out the Tangzhong into the bowl of a stand mixer, and then add in 1 large egg and 4 grams of instant dry yeast. Whisk all the ingredients together until homogeneous, and then add in 405 grams of cold all-purpose flour. And by cold, I actually mean that I stuck my flour in the freezer overnight. Because enriched doughs take so long to knead, they heat up a lot during the kneading process, especially if you're using a stand mixer. By using cold ingredients, we can control the dough's final temperature and slow down the fermentation. Run the stand mixer on a low speed for about 2 minutes or until there's no longer any dry bits of flour. Then turn off the mixer and allow the dough to rest for 15 minutes so the flour can have time to hydrate. When the dough's done resting, run the stand mixer on medium speed for about 10 to 14 minutes. I'll detail stand mixer instructions for a KitchenAid in the description with the exact speed and the amount of time it was used for. When the gluten has developed to the point that the dough is no longer sticking to the bowl, stop the mixer and scrape down the ring of dough that has formed along the sides of the bowl. Then restart the mixer for a couple minutes to incorporate the scraps into the main dough. When the dough is strong and no longer sticking to the bowl, stop the mixer and allow the dough and the mixer to rest for 15 minutes. After the second 15-minute rest, add in 45 grams of softened and unsalted butter, and then run the mixer again on a medium speed. With the addition of fat, the dough is going to be sliding around in the bowl, so you can periodically stop the mixer and use a spatula to fold the dough over the hook. And you can also scrape down the sides of the bowl for any butter that doesn't get incorporated into the dough. After a couple minutes, the butter will be worked into the dough, but the dough is going to become sticky because the fat has disrupted the gluten network. After about 5 more minutes of additional kneading, the dough will regain its strength and no longer be sticky. Also, since this kneading process is pretty lengthy, make sure to monitor the temperature of your stand mixer. When the dough has regained its strength and is no longer sticking to the sides of the bowl, reduce the stand mixer speed to low and continue kneading for another 5 to 8 minutes. When done kneading, stretch a small section of the dough, and if you're able to stretch it thin enough that light is able to pass through without the dough tearing, you're good to go and you can proceed with removing the dough from the bowl. After kneading the dough, it's a good idea to take its temperature, and right now the dough is 83 degrees, which is pretty warm considering that room temperature is about 72. To shape the dough into a tight sphere, place it onto an unfloured work surface, and then come at it with your hand at a 45-degree angle. And then use the tension of the counter to pull the dough into a tight sphere. Keep repeating this step until the surface is tight, but don't go overboard because eventually you'll end up tearing the dough surface. Place the dough ball in a lightly greased container and then move it to the fridge where it can bulk ferment for about 1 to 2 days. After about 24 hours in the fridge, the dough will be close to double in size. Weigh the dough and divide it into 12 equal pieces, weighing about 70 to 75 grams each. To shape the individual donuts, place the dough on the counter with the smooth side facing down. Place any smaller pieces on top, and after pressing out the dough, fold the edges of the dough towards the center. And after making it all the way around, pick the dough off the counter and have the side that was facing down face up. Make an opening with one hand and then force the dough through that opening. By forcing the dough through the opening, its surface will become smooth and it will take on a ball shape. Try your best to pinch the bottom of the dough closed and then place it onto an unfloured work surface and use the counter to tighten the surface of the ball. When satisfied with the dough ball's smoothness, place it onto a lightly greased baking sheet, keeping track of which dough balls you made first. When finished making your dough balls, make sure there's enough space in between each one, and then cover with plastic wrap and leave them to rise for 1.5 to 2 hours. For our sugar coating, it's just going to be 3/4 of a cup or 150 grams of sugar and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Whisk until the cinnamon is well distributed and then set the bowl aside for later. So after 2 hours, my donuts have rised nicely, and you can check if they're done rising by poking them with a lightly floured finger. The dough should spring back, but leave a small indent after being poked. To fry the donuts, you'll want to use about 2 to 3 inches of a neutral high heat oil such as canola. And I'm frying in a wok, but if I wasn't filming a video, I would just be frying my donuts in a pot to save on oil. The best thing to use to monitor the oil's temperature is going to be one of these probe thermometers that you normally only use on your Thanksgiving turkey. When the oil reaches a temperature of 360 F, lay in the dough balls with the smooth side facing towards the oil. Maintaining the oil's temperature is one of the keys to getting great donuts. So throughout the frying process, adjust the heat as necessary to maintain a temperature of 350 to 360 F. The best way to flip these donuts is just going to be using a pair of forks. So flip the donuts over when the first side has a deep brown color, which will be around 2.5 minutes of frying. So after 2.5 minutes, the second side should have a deep brown color, and as long as you maintain the oil at the proper temperature, the donut should be fully cooked in the center. Use the color of the donut as a guide to tell if they're cooked rather than time. It's better that the donuts are a little too dark rather than pale. When the donuts are finished frying, fish them out and let any excess oil drip off before transferring them to cool on a wire rack. Let the donuts cool on the wire rack for about a minute before tossing them in the cinnamon sugar. It's important that the donut is still hot when tossing it in the sugar, otherwise none of the sugar is going to stick to it. These donuts have really opened my eyes onto just how amazing a donut can be. I know it sounds like I'm biting into an apple in the intro, but these donuts are seriously crisp. And let's not forget about that pillowy interior, so soft and fluffy. As the donuts cool, they start to take on a more bread-like texture, which is still good, but I think it's best to take advantage of the fact that they are homemade and eat them fresh. The Tangzhong and cold bulk fermentation is a killer combo, and they have helped create one of the best donuts I've ever had. These donuts are truly amazing, and I really hope you give them a try soon.